It creates a nightmare. So this is just an example of the joint. As you can see, it is still tight as can be. What is it that the commercial guy does that the hobbyists don't? And so today we're going to go over a quick tip. If you're into beekeeping and you're planning on building any of your own equipment, there is a tool that is just an absolute must-have. If there's a way to assemble boxes, I've tried it. I've tried brads, I've tried 8-penny nails, I've tried screws, I've tried, you know, the quarter crown staples, but there is one tool that I have bought here recently that I absolutely love, and that is a 7/16 medium crown stapler. This is a Freeman brand stapler. Just looked it up on Amazon. It is $149 for this stapler. That's a lot cheaper than the other brands that are out there. A lot of the other ones, the name brands, are closer to $200, $250. I actually bought a Freeman brand stapler when I did some hardwood flooring at my old house about 6 or 8 years ago. So when I saw this Freeman brand 7/16 crown stapler, I figured that I would give it a try, and it's not let me down. There's some staples that you can also buy on Amazon. It's a B&C staples. I'll put the links in the description. Those boxes, they're about $55 for that box of staples, but there's 10,000 staples in the box. I've probably run somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 staples over the last year through this stapler, and knock on wood, it has not jammed one time. I've never had to dig staples out of this staple gun. I bought the 1.5 inch and the 2-inch staples for this gun, and I'm going to show you real quick how I staple my boxes. I've used butt joints, I've used some finger joints, but of course the best joint that you can use, and probably the simplest to make if you're going to build your own equipment, is the rabbited joint. And I have a certain way that I staple my my rabbit joints with this staple gun, and it really prevents a lot of the problems that some of the other methods have whenever you're building your own boxes. So let's take a look at some of the problems with the other methods, and I'll show you how I staple my boxes. Alright, so this first one was I used brads, just regular old brads. I think they were 16 gauged finish nails, and here's the biggest problem with those. You can see real quickly this joint is loose, and it's stapled from both ends. I have 1, 2, 3, or it's not stapled, excuse me, it's nailed. It's nailed 1, 2, 3 here, and then there's a nail between those 3. There's 2 more nails, 1, 2. So that holds this box, this outside board, and it's rabbited, and it's also glued. It holds this box from you being able to pull this the front piece out, and it also locks it in from pulling this side piece this way. But you can see it's still pretty weak. Another problem that I've had with the brads, even though this is a rabbited joint and it was glued over time and just being used, the ends a lot of times will cup, the boards will cup even though it's painted, and these brads just do not have the strength to hold that on there. And so when this cups, what ends up happening is the lip that your frames sit on, it actually pulls that lip out this way. Now, if it does it on the other end, it pulls the lip out that way. And then if you slide your frame all the way to one end, the other end will actually fall down in the hive, and it creates a nightmare. The bees will end up gluing the frame from this box to the frame in the box below it, and it's awful. So primary reason why I do not like brads, they're not strong and they don't have good holding power. Now on this box we have actual 8-penny nails that have been drove in, 5 nails, and it's a butt joint. So it's not as strong of a joint as say a rabbited joint, but as you can tell, it's held up pretty well. The box is still together, it's still pretty solid, it was never painted. But here's the problem with regular old 8-penny nails. If I zoom in, you can see that nail sticking out, and that's your biggest problem with regular nails. You drive them in with a hammer, they hold really well, but your biggest problem, nails just back out over time, and that creates weakness in the box, and it allows for like rain and stuff to get in there where those nail holes were, and you get a lot of rot there. So that's basically my primary reason. In addition, you know, when you're trying to hold a box and you're trying to hold the pieces together, hold the nail together, you're sitting there driving the nails in, it's not as neat. A lot of times you'll struggle to keep your boxes and your corners even and looking really nice because you're trying to hammer on there. Now you can start your nails, you can kind of drive them in ahead of time so you don't have to hit them so many times, but it takes longer than like a nail gun, an air powered gun, and they back out over time. So that's the reason I don't really like those. So here's another method of putting boxes together. You can use screws. Screws work really well. The only problem with screws, they're expensive. The other problem with screws, if you're not careful and you do not pre-drill your holes, you will bust your wood, which is then basically weakens the wood. A lot of people use, and what these are, they're just sheetrock screws. They're very cheap in the screws category, but in the grand scheme of things, to buy 10,000 screws, like you would buy 10,000 staples, it would cost you probably a lot more than $55. I haven't looked that up. Maybe you can look it up. And there again, it still is going to take more time if you pre-drill your holes. If you don't pre-drill your holes, you don't mind busting the wood up, it may not take quite as much time. You might be able to make a jig and screw them in faster, but you know, as far as speed and value, screws are a little bit more expensive, but they don't back out like regular nails. If I pull this box up, if I get that in you can see there a crack in the wood, kind of where it cracked it. Not bad, but it does happen. So screws are another option. So last but not least, this is an example of my crown stapler. As you can see, I have 3 staples, 1, 2, 3 here. On this other side, I have 2 staples, 1, 2 that go between those 3. That stapler, like I say, it holds the boxes very well. I've not had any problem with them pulling loose. And let's take a look at this box. I used it for probably a year and a half. It's not been painted, it's been out in the weather. As you can tell, it's weathered wood. And let me show you how tight that joint still is. So this is just an example of the joint. As you can see, it is still tight as can be. There's no bowing or warping in the wood. And actually, these crown staples, if your boards are a little bit cupped, I've had some of these boards, so this rabbit would be cupped. There'd be a gap here in the center. You put a staple up here in this center going through this way, and it would actually take the bow out of the wood. They hold that well. So just a quick tip, if you're thinking about building your own boxes or getting into assembling your own stuff, you know, I know for a lot of people $150 is a lot of money, and buying the staples, it's a big upfront cost, but you will not go wrong with that Freeman 7/16 crown stapler. There's a lot of things in beekeeping that I've learned over the last few years as I went from hobby to a more commercial style. I'm definitely not a commercial beekeeper. I'm probably what you would consider a sideliner. But you know, as a hobbyist, I was not really being as successful as I would have liked, and I just thought to myself, you know, these commercial guys, they've got enough bees to where every spring they're selling bees, and I'm having to buy their bees and trying to stay ahead. And so I really started trying to study what is it that the commercial guy does that the hobbyists don't, and what can I implement in my practices to improve me as a beekeeper. And one thing that I found is there's a lot of little things like this that the hobbyist doesn't think about that can really improve their success or make their life a lot easier. If you go ask a lot of the commercial guys, what are they doing to assemble their boxes? You know, they're not using 8-penny nails, they're not using brads. They need that speed and they need the power. So they're going to tell you they're using Titebond 3 glue, and they're using 7/16 crown staples or screws, one of the two. And so I just want to pass that along, just the thing that I've learned, and maybe that'll help you out in the future and prevent you from having to build a bunch of boxes like I have that have basically fell apart or the nails have backed out, and save you a lot of time and money. All right, y'all have a good one.